Welcome to Wined Down Western New York. I'm Steph, and I am here to bring you my first full-length video on the Wined Down Western New York tour, if you will. And our first stop is Wellsville, New York. So, if you haven't watched any of my introduction videos, Wined Down Western New York is all about people, places, and products that started in Western New York. Maybe they haven't stayed in Western New York, but everything that maybe originated in Western New York. And there's so many awesome places in Western New York, and I want to bring those to you. The reason I chose Wellsville as my very first location is because it's my hometown. It's where I grew up. So I spent my childhood there all the way until college, and then obviously summers, home from college. And it's just a place that has a lot of memories for me, and it's such a beautiful little town, and I really want to share it with you. So let me show you the map, and I will show you my Western New York region that I'm working with and exactly where Wellsville is located in case you don't know. All right, so here is my Western New York map. You can see I've highlighted in green what I am considering Western New York for Wined Down Western New York with Steph. I'm obviously going all the way over here to the Pennsylvania border, but over here, I'm extending it a little past maybe what others consider Western New York, because I think that the Finger Lake region is really a gorgeous place because it includes Watkins Glen and Ithaca. So I'm actually going to include that in what I consider Western New York, if you will. But let's focus on my very first stop, which is Wellsville. So let me just point out some cities. Here's Buffalo, here's Rochester, and come down here to this pin, if you will. And this right here is Wellsville, New York. So it's about 90 miles south of Buffalo and probably just under that for Rochester. So it is a small town, so charming, and I can't wait to show you around. So come have a look.
Welcome to Wellsville, the home of the Pink House, a famous old-fashioned house with a lot of history as well as a lot of stories, especially ghost stories. A beautiful place to take a picture. We also have the Giant Food Mart, which is just a small locally owned grocery store, but known for their salt rise and bread, which is a tradition in Allegany County. Here's my high school. And welcome to Main Street, USA, Wellsville, New York. I love the charm of this main street. It just has the classic tall brick buildings, just so home. And if you take a look right here, you're gonna find the Texas Hot. We're gonna circle back to that in a minute. Right here's the Twin 2. It's just a cute little two-screen movie theater that's adorable. The Beef House, excellent restaurant owned by family friends. And this is the David A. Howe Library. It is another treasure in town. It truly is a beautiful historical building. The inside is even more beautiful. Unfortunately, I did not get footage of that, but it's so worth taking a look at. And look over there, that's the Texas Hot. I'm actually gonna focus on the Texas Hot. It's truly a hot spot in Wellsville. It is a quaint little restaurant, diner, if you will, that has been in the Wellsville area now for 100 years this November. And just take a look at the food. Oh, so good. These are your fries. You can get gravy on them or on the side. This is a traditional Texas Hot, a Texas cheeseburger. They have phenomenal milkshakes. Just look at that. Oh, yum. Chocolate, my fave. And the cute little menu that they have up on their wall. And they have little jukeboxes at every table. This is the traditional menu. And here you're going to have your grill workers. When you walk in, you get to actually see them cook your food. Very traditional. I think it's all started the same way. It has not changed much. They've really tried to stick with the original decor throughout. They have all these pictures in there too that some of them are just photographs that photographers have taken. And then you're going to find a couple that are photographs of famous people, and they have signed them and hung them up, which is really unique. There have been some pretty famous people that have come to the Texas Hot, including Donny Osmond, Bill Pullman, a couple more that I can't think of right off the top of my head. But just some really neat photos there. And you're going to take a look over here and also see like the traditional diner type of atmosphere that you'll find when you come to the Texas Hot. So that was my little tour of Wellsville and some of the beautiful spots. But now I really want to focus in on the Texas Hot. The Texas Hot is probably the longest standing business in the town. This November, they're celebrating their 100th anniversary. And for a business to survive 100 years successfully is truly astonishing. So I was able to interview Mike Raptis, one of the current owners of the Texas Hot, via Zoom. And I can't wait to share this interview with you. So grab a glass of wine, wind down for the night, and watch the interview with Mike. He was able to share so much history and information, and I did a little research myself, and after the interview I have more information to share as well.
So the original two owners were George Raptis and Jim Regas, and they worked in almost until the day they died. They were there with their presence, I believe.
Wow.
And some of these details that I give you may be wrong, but Jim died in the later 70s, maybe 76, 78. And my grandfather, George, died in 83. So they were there doing some kind of chores every day. As they got older, maybe every other day, but they were there all the time. Then Gus Regas took over, and my father, Jim Raptis, and they worked from the 50s to the late 70s, early 80s. More the early 80s. I think Chris took over maybe around 83, and I came in when I graduated in 84. And now Chris's son James is working on his behalf, and my son Demetrius and daughter Isabel are working there on my behalf. So we're into the fourth generation.
All right. And do you hope to keep it going?
Well, of course.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
So
we'll be celebrating our 100th anniversary in November. They opened up November 21st, 1921.
All right. So, same location?
Same location, same building, same everything.
That's
same
pretty
owners,
impressive.
Same partnership all the way through for 100 years.
That's amazing. You don't find many like that today, for sure.
No, you don't. That's true.
So I have to ask about the recipe, because that was going to come up. Everybody who goes to Texas Hot is like, I wonder what's in this, right? I will tell you, the Texas Hot sauce at your restaurant is nothing compared to any other place I've tried. And because I was born and raised in Wellsville, growing up on Texas Hot, it's obviously the best. So I haven't found anything as good as it yet. So what's the secret? Is there a secret that you can share without sharing too much?
Not really the secret. So we have our recipe. Other restaurants have their recipes. Families have recipes. So, what goes in a recipe are different spices and meats and timing and things of that nature. So even though people may claim they have a recipe, or my grandmother has a recipe, there's always different ways of cooking the same recipe, which affect the flavor. And I'd like to think not too many people actually have the recipe.
Sure. Like I said, I haven't found anything comparable yet that even comes close.
It's also the wiener and the bun and the onions. Everything goes together. It's not just the sauce recipe. There are other things involved too.
Sure. And do you use a local brand for your hot dogs?
We're using Zweigel's now out of Rochester.
Out of Rochester. Wonderful. And what about your rolls?
Stroman rolls right now.
Okay.
Stroman's.
So that has changed over the years a little bit, the hot dog or the rolls, or no?
Everything changes over the years.
But not the sauce, right?
Well, even that, yeah, I have to say it's changed because the
Okay.
quality of spices change. When you
Okay.
go to the grocery store in 1940, it's a different product, even though it's the same product in 2000 and 2020. So quality changes, although we try to buy the best quality. Back then, everything was grass fed. Now the meat's different. So that makes a difference. So quality is always changing, but we do our best to maintain the high standard.
Sure.
As far as hot dog rolls, even the hot dog rolls, I'm sure they've changed their product line, and
Sure.
they have changed not just the ingredients, but the product line. And because we're small potatoes, there are many times that they say, we're no longer going to be giving you this, we're going to give you that. And there's not too much choice. The same with the wieners. We had Tobin's wieners for decades. Before Tobin's, I'm not sure what they had in the 30s and the 40s, but we had Tobin's wieners for probably 30, 40 years. And then one day they said, we're not going to make your wiener anymore. Well, can you make something different? No, we're just not doing it. I'm sorry. Thank you and goodbye. So at that point in time, you shop around. And when we did shop around, we did go out of area, naturally, Buffalo, even Syracuse, Rochester. And I may have my own personal opinion as to which wiener is better, but we let the customer decide. So
Oh, cool.
we served all kinds of wieners for a small duration of time. And it was according to the customer feedback that we decided. And once we told Zweigels that we'd like to go with their product, we asked them to change a couple of ingredients. And so they make our wiener for us now. So Mr. Regas and Mr. Raptus, they came from Greece. And I don't want to say together. They may have physically been together or in different durations, as in a month or two or 6 months apart. I don't know. The story, as I recall it, is when they came to America, my grandfather was in Johnsonburg, Pennsylvania, and Mr. Regas may have been there, and I'm not sure of that for sure, for a short period of time. They said, let's go find something. We got to find something to do. Mr. Regas came up north to the Wellsville area. I believe he was in Olean first. It may have been Cuba, but I think it was Olean. So he opened up a pool hall with a hat parlor. Back then, the gentlemen wore hats, and you had to have your hat cleaned and dusted and reformatted periodically. And from what I understand, it was in the pool hall. So he opened up with Mr. Poulis this pool hall with the hat. And I'm not exactly sure how it happened, but he started looking around for something different. And I believe he went to Olean to look around, and no, he wasn't Olean. So he went to Cuba to look around, and I don't think he found anything there. So while my grandfather was in Johnsonburg, Mr. Regas came to Wellsville and looked around. And I may get this a little wrong, but I believe while he was in Wellsville searching, he talked to Mr. Standards. And I'm not sure if Mr. Standards, it was his grandfather or himself when Standards was named, but it's from the same family line. So he's talking to Mr. Standards, who maybe had a building or two in Wellsville, and one of them was empty, and he wanted to get it filled. So he talked to Mr. Regas about putting something in this empty building. And Mr. Regas really wasn't sure what to put in there and this and that. So from what I understand, Mr. Standards suggested putting in a Texas hot. The way the story's told is there was more than one Texas hot, just like you have original Italian pizza. every community's or every other community has the original family Italian pizza. So there were a number of Texas Hots in different locations, and I guess that was the diner to go to at that time. So Mr. Standard suggested to open up a Texas Hot style restaurant because naturally he wanted his building filled, and Mr. Riga says, okay, maybe that's a good idea. So they didn't have email, and I'm not really sure how they communicated, but Mr. Regas opened up in November of 21 the restaurant, and his first partner was Mr. Poulis. Mr. Poulis was his partner in the pool hall back in Olean. So he wrote to my grandfather and said, I think I found something, leave what you're doing and come up here. So my grandfather came in January, and Mr. Regas told Mr. Poulis, you keep the pool hall, and I'm going to keep the restaurant. So that's how it all got started. There was a building that was empty in Wellsville, and the landlord wanted it filled.
And so your grandfather came on as his partner?
Yeah.
Okay. That is so cool. So I didn't realize that the Texas Hot went way back that far, that it was a popular thing back then.
Yeah, I didn't either. I've asked Gus prior to his passing many years, geez, how did this name get started? And nobody really seemed to have a good square answer. Even Gus didn't tell me the story, and I forget where the story came from that Mr. Standards had suggested that. My dad would be a good source too. He has a better memory than I do, and he lived it all. But when I asked Gus, why did you call it Texas Hot? He came up with one answer which was different than what I just explained, but I liked my explanation, and I believe that one more. Gus had said that Texas back then was the place to go to as far as business and land ownership. Everybody was going to Texas, just like later on everybody went to California. And he goes, maybe that's where it started, and so the word Texas Hot, even though let's say there were some in the 1915s, 1920, where did that come from? Maybe that's what he was trying to answer.
Right.
But I believe that I believe the story that Mr. Standards said, well, I'll open up a Texas Hot. They seem to be doing okay.
Okay. Cool.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Mike. He provided so much information. He actually made me more curious. So I did some research. I wanted to see about all the other restaurants that also opened up in the 20s for what's called the Texas Hot. And there were a lot of restaurants. It was a very popular thing back then. What I did find out is a lot of them aren't around still. So the fact that the Texas Hot in Wellsville still exists, that's 100 years of history right there. I think that's amazing. So I would highly recommend going to Wellsville and having a Texas Hot. Other thing that I had to research was the name Texas being part of it. And from what I can tell, I think it was put there because the sauce is like a chili base type sauce, even though it tastes nothing like chili to me. It has spices and seasonings that are have somewhat of a chili consistency with the meat in it, which was a very Texas thing. So I think that is where the name Texas comes into play with that. So it was fun to look it up and see all the research. Again, it's just a fun little atmosphere restaurant. I highly recommend, if you have the opportunity to, take a day trip to Wellsville, especially in the fall. The foliage is gorgeous. Put it in your GPS and take a ride. Also, the other thing that Wellsville is known for is our Wellsville Balloon Rally. It is always the third week of July, and unfortunately for the last 2 years, it has not been able to happen, but they do say it's coming back in 2022. So it is a hot air balloon festival where anywhere from about 20 to 40 balloons generally go up in the air or either tether, and they do fireworks, and they do what's called an afterglow, which is the flame inside the balloon going up at nighttime. So when it gets dark out, they all light their propane, I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's like the torch that actually keeps the hot air in the balloon. That they light all those and they glow up, and it's so pretty. So I am going to show you a couple pictures of the balloon rally that I have, and that's another wonderful time to visit Wellsville, is in the summer during the balloon rally. So I really hope that you'll take the opportunity to take a day trip and head down there. So enjoy these few pictures of the balloon rally, and I hope to see you soon.